So this is part two of how even a thief can be an honorable thief. Um, even the worst person in the world has some good qualities, and I learned by personal experience that even a thief can be an honorable thief. If you listened to part one, you heard about the things that happened in the morning of this particular day, and how there were two robbery attempts um, at, with me on that morning. We got back to our home in Kajak in the afternoon, and when we got home, we started unloading our things and getting into the house. And then Madam Pastor Paul came, and she said, "Pastor Merle, while you were gone, something really, really terrible happened. You need to sit down so I can tell you." And so I'm thinking, well, who died? Like, what happened? What could be so bad um, that I have to sit down? And she said, well, what happened is while you were gone, somebody broke into your house and they stole things from your house. We don't know what all they've taken, but you need to go through your house and you need to look at what's missing and see what they've taken. So we went through our house, we looked, and we were missing a few things. And there were things that were stolen. Um, and so, but then from that time until the service in the evening, there were just a constant flow of people coming through our house and coming to our house and from the community and telling us how angry they were that someone had stolen or broken into our house and stolen our things. And what had happened at the back of the house, one of the windows, there was an iron, there was no glass, it was just an open, when it was an opening in the concrete wall, and then there was an iron grate in the window, and the thief had broken that iron grate out of the concrete and bent it up so that he could crawl in through that window. Well, I had no way of bending it back. I had no way of getting it back in place. I was going to have to hire someone to fix it or replace it. And so there it was. Anybody could crawl into our house at that time. And people were so upset and everyone was so angry about who would do that. And one of my friends, one of my American friends who was living in Haiti at the time, told me the worst thing about this whole experience for you is when you find out who it was, it's going to be somebody that you knew and somebody that you trusted. So, um, all afternoon, people were coming and saying how upset they were. Then we went to church that night, and I hadn't had time to really process it, to really think about it much, how I felt about it, because people were just coming all the time. And so we got to the church service. I didn't have anything, any part in the service that evening, um, but at the end of the service, um, Pastor Paul Vital asked me if I would have the closing prayer. And when I got up and started praying, I had just gotten into my closing prayer when a lady uh, rolled out into the aisle and started screaming and thrashing around and disrupted. I, I was emotionally vulnerable already, and then that happened. I could hardly finish my prayer, and people took her outside. I went outside afterwards, and there she was. And when you looked at her, it just looked like nobody was home. Like her eyes were just a vacant stare, and she would talk, but uh, it, there was it didn't look like she was really connecting. And Pastor Paul said, "Pastor Merle, we'll take care of this. You go home. I'm going to send somebody down during the night every hour to just to walk around your house and make sure that everything is okay," because we weren't sure, did the person know that we weren't home and robbed our house because they knew we weren't home? Or were they hoping we would be home and then we weren't home? So would they come back when they knew that we were home? So we were a little uncertain about what was going to happen. Well, that whole day was a pretty traumatic day. And I got to our house. We got to our house as a family. We lit our Coleman lantern. We sat around the table, myself and Edith and our children. And I didn't know what was going to happen that night. And I will confess to you that as a dad, what I wanted to do was I wanted to pack up my family and leave and go back to the United States and be somewhere where I would feel more safe. But I couldn't do that. That was not an option. And so we talked about some of the things that happened. We said, well, we don't know what's going to happen tonight between now and when the sun comes up in the morning. But we're in God's hands. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to stay here and we'll see what God does. And so we prayed. We went to bed and nothing happened. Everything was fine. We got up the next morning. That was the end of that sequence of events. But I think that the evil one orchestrated the events of that day to intimidate us, to frighten us, to scare us. Um, but in some ways, the devil is kind of like a schoolyard bully. He overplays his hand. He goes too far. One of the things about bullies is they don't know when to quit, and then they go too far, and it backfires on them. And all those things that happened that day, they turned around to really bond us to people in the community. The other thing was that lady that disrupted the service. The next morning, she came to Pastor Paul's house and she asked for money to take Tap Tap to go back to her home. She was from about an hour away, and she said that um, a voodoo practitioner, a witch doctor, had put her on a Tap Tap, and she didn't know where she was supposed to go. But when the Tap Tap stopped close to where our church was, and she saw the lights at the church, she knew that was where she was supposed to go. And so Pastor Paul gave her money, and she went back home. However, over the next few days, people were really upset about what had happened, that we had been robbed, and we've. I told Pastor Paul, all the things we lost, it's okay. Like I don't. The thief can have everything he took, but there's one thing I really regret, and that is that he took my wallet, and the only thing that was in my wallet was my driver's license, my health card, my all my IDs, my credit card, and I was like, those cards don't do anything for the thief. They are of no good to him, but they're really important for me. And it's going to be a lot of work for me when I get back home to Canada to reapply for all those cards. And so I regret losing those cards. Everything else, it's no problem. The thief can have those things. Oh, Pastor Paul said, we can get those back. We can get that. We can get that wallet back. And well, okay. So he went out along the street, and the way you communicated there was if you wanted to get a message out, there were no cell phones or anything at that time. The way you would get a message out was you go out along the main road and you would tell people, and they would pass the message up and down the road by word of mouth. So Pastor Paul went out along the road. He started talking to people, and he said, Pastor Merle says that everything's okay. The thief can have everything he took. It's no problem. He doesn't. The thief can just keep everything he took. But there's one thing that he regrets that the thief took, and that was there was a little wallet that has some cards in, and those cards are very important, Pastor Merle, but they have no value to the thief. So, if the thief wants to show that he's an honorable thief, he will bring back that wallet. Well, I thought that's a novel concept, an honorable thief. I don't know that I ever put those two words together in the same sentence or attach that adjective to a thief, but we'll see what happens. Oh, he said, we'll get it back. So people kept talking about it and saying that and passing the message around. A few days later, uh, one of my neighbors was at my house. It was after dark, and He was telling me if he ever catches that thief, what he's going to do to him and exactly how he's going to torture him. And I was like, no, 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 no. I don't want anybody to do anything. If we ever find out who the thief is, I don't want anybody to hurt the thief. Like, please tell people I don't want anyone taking revenge on the thief. It's fine. It's okay. But I don't want the thief getting hurt. Um, so my neighbor man left after a while, and we were getting ready for bed. And I went out my back door to brush my teeth. And when I opened the back door, there on the concrete pad outside my back door was my wallet with all the cards in it. So the thief was an honorable thief. He did bring back the cards. When he did that, someone saw him coming through the cornfield. And so that's how I found out who the thief was. And it was someone that we knew quite well. But he was an honorable thief. He brought back the things that were really important. So even the worst person, the person who hurts you in some painful way, there are some good qualities about them. They may be an honorable person.